So here we are in the middle of Eden 1. Like I mentioned before, this is my oldest garden. It's been here for 8 years. We started this garden with just wood chips. Over my shoulder, my left shoulder up against the building, I put down 4 or 5 inches of fresh wood chips. Later in the season I got some more wood chips from a gentleman who has been taking care of me for many years, has since passed away. I got more chips from him and I expanded the garden to the size that it is today. Every year, every fall, we put more chips down, another 3 or 4 inches in the spring. If those chips have broken down sufficiently and become well integrated with cultures of fungal spores, once I know that they become really well bound together, I'll actually cover them again. I do this because I have a large reserve of wood chips, and over the years I've developed a system where I actually keep 2 or 3 piles of wood chips in constant rotation. I am turning them over periodically to encourage them to stay aerobic, to keep the oxygen levels high, to keep them breaking down, and then based on whichever one has progressed the most, I'll be using that for fertility adds. Whichever one has progressed the least will be the final cover for the spring and summer growing season. In the southeast United States, the spring and summer is when we really have to worry about weeds. I don't like weeds. As you can see, there aren't any weeds. I get a couple little small ones that pop up. I just hit them with the rake. I just kick them with the side of my boot. They pop out, the side of it is exposed to the sun, and then they just break down in place. Some people like to call it chop and drop, but I'm not even chopping, I'm just kind of kicking it over. I can see a really small one right there. As a course of maintenance, you know, we just bend over and pull it out. Look at that, it's done. Wow, weeding for the day is done. Behind me, I just want to point out that I've got a lettuce crop that's behind me that I didn't plant. This lettuce crop was planted by Mother Nature. It's a volunteer crop. 2 years ago I planted lettuce that it grew really well. I had more than I could use, as is always the case. I end up with more than I could use, and I let it go, and it kept going and kept going, and they bolted when it got warm, and then they seeded, and then they dropped seeds, and then the seeds became this. I got enough room. I'm not worried about it. I don't have to plant this crop this year. A little bit further down the garden, I've got another section that was lettuce. I planted them last year. They grew in. We harvested a lot of fresh lettuce. I love iceberg lettuce. And I cut them down to the surface of the chips. And more often than not, usually, they come back again. We'll talk about that another time. But in any event, what I want to point out is that I see a lot of people who are confused about what to expect, what they should do, what do they need to do, how complicated they need to make this. It doesn't need to be complicated. The model already exists around in the woods. The trees have little branches, they break off, they fall to the ground, it becomes litter on the ground, it covers the earth, it prevents erosion, and it creates a haven for insects and other biologies. And quite frankly, if there's enough sunlight and enough moisture and a seed falls, another tree or another plant grows. We are capitalizing on that investment that Mother Nature has made in its ecosystems, and we're just simply using it here. We're speeding it up. Can you do this in raised bed format? You absolutely can do this in raised bed format. I'm sitting on a raised bed. It's 24 inch deep at the deepest and about 14 inches deep up behind me. It is a raised bed. Is it high? Is it off the ground? No. It needs to be connected to the ground, in my opinion, because there's an ion exchange that only happens when your garden is in full contact with the earth. I won't say much more about that. You can figure it out yourself. But in any event, you can build a raised bed using the same exact methods, and it will grow. It will take time. If you start like I did with this right here, it is going to take time, because this needs to break down to what I'm going to show you in a second. This needs to break down into the compost layer that is beneath this. And every single year we create another compost layer. That's what happens when you cover in the fall and then again in the spring. You're building that bed, you're building it up. And as you're building it up, the earth is shaking and wiggling and vibrating and twisting and turning, and all this other stuff is going on with the weather and the heat and us. our feet, and it's compressing and it's drawing in moisture, and then it's compressing and it's pushing moisture out. And it rains, and all of this stuff percolates down into the root zone and feeds your plants. It's pretty simple. So what does it look like? Right here, I'm standing on what, 8, 10, 12 inches of chips? I promise you, none of that is growing in the dirt below. What you can't see is two 2-foot tall broccoli. I'm sorry, broccoli. Broccoli's there. Brussels sprouts. And these are 2 mother hosts that I have. I use them to propagate and to clone my other Brussels sprouts off of every year. Have done so for the past 3 years. Very simple. But they too, they're 2 feet tall, and their roots are not in the dirt below. They're not touching red clay. If they were touching red clay, they'd be dead. I grew in the red clay, I know. Out there. This space represents what I grew out there. 9 times the size. I get all that from here. Anyway, deep compost bed. Just below the surface is this rich soil right here. That's what we want to grow in. It's moist, it holds water well, it's full of nutrition, it's full of what the plants love, it's full of worms. Anyway, I'm going to dig a little bit dirtier and a little bit down more. I'm going to bring the camera to that. This is what we want to grow in. Not the dirt below, but that broken down stuff. It's very fine, it's very healthy, and as you can see, it starts just beneath the coarsest chips, and that media is all the way to the red clay below. And this right here, anybody who's ever grown lettuce knows that lettuce doesn't have a huge root, is not growing in the clay below. Brussels sprouts, also not growing in the clay below. You can see their clone babies down on the ground. I can walk you over here. Lettuce. All these lettuces, in particular this one as well, were cut off, flush with the ground, and they grew another head. Okay, what else can I say? Onions, nope, not in the dirt. It's just growing right there in the compost. Those of you who've grown a whole variety of different crops know some crops are harder to grow than others. These two are growing with wood chips right up against them, no problem. Started them last year by letting them do their thing. Just want to make that point clear. When we as humans get involved, more often than not, we just make things worse. Some carrots, I'm sharing these with the voles. Y'all have probably seen my video on that. Walking onions over here, more than enough. Fresh planted onions. There's onions down there. Literally scratch the surface and drop the seeds. And they come up looking like the ones you see here now. Difficult to see them coming up right now, but they are. I didn't do anything. I didn't add soil. I didn't add anything I bought from the store to make them grow. Right here you can see my carrot crop. I'm not sharing these. They look like they're planted really close together. That media is so fine. It was sieved with a 1/2-inch cloth, and when those carrots grow larger, they'll just push each other out of the way, and I'll pick the largest and I'll eat them, and then I'll just compress the soil around the carrot again and they'll keep growing. Underneath this is a screen, so I'm not going to have any moles or voles eating anything over here. There you can see garlic crop just beyond it. The smaller garlics are from garlic seeds, and the larger garlics are from cloves. I like to grow full term. When I grow full term, I'll often get seeds on the top, and those will be collected and used for another generation of garlic. If you're still watching, you've been here all this time, you can see I have some thyme here. Growing in the middle of the garden, that's about 3 years old. As it gets warmed up, that'll get really green. And then the mommy will come out here and cut some of it, and then I'll ask her to come back and cut more, and she'll refuse. That's why it's so big.